All right. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. So I want to start with a moment that might feel familiar. You're in a meeting or reading an email, and suddenly something shifts, whether it's leadership, priorities, expectations, and just like that, things might feel a little less steady. Even when change is necessary, it can still feel disruptive. And today is really about that moment, how we respond when things around us shift, and how we build the ability to move through it. So before we begin, I'd like to share a little about myself. I'm currently the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Specialist at Metro State University's Institute for Professional Development. I'm originally from the Twin Cities, so very familiar with the Twin Cities landscape, and I've lived here my entire life. My background that I'm coming with today is in higher education, where I gained experience in advising, career development, mentorship, and leadership training. So that will be my lens I'm speaking through today as your presenter. My work here at the Institute for Professional Development, or IPD as we call it, focuses heavy on workplace culture, communication, and resilience. A lot of the organizations that I've worked with that have navigated real transitions, again, whether that was leadership changes, restructuring, growth, and sometimes uncertainty as a whole. And one thing I've seen consistently is that organizations that navigate change the best aren't the ones that avoid disruption. They're the ones that build the skills to respond to it well. So again, this will be our framing for today. I always love a good quote. So I wanted to start with this quote. It is not the strongest who survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. So this quote is often attributed to Charles Darwin. And while it's simple, it captures something important. Thriving during change isn't about being the smartest person in the room or even the most experienced. Again, it's how we respond. And that's good news, because response is something that we can develop. So over the next hour or so, we're going to focus on four main ideas. First, we'll talk about why change feels so disruptive, even when we expect it. Then we'll look at adaptability and why it's actually a skill that can be strengthened over time. We'll also talk about practical ways to stay grounded when things feel uncertain. And finally, we'll look at a few simple strategies you can use right away when navigating transitions. Again, this isn't meant to be a heavy or overwhelming session. The goal is to take a step back, reflect a little bit, and be able to take away a few key tools that can make change easier to navigate. So let's start with something important. When people struggle during change, it isn't usually because they aren't capable. It's because change disrupts something we rely on every day, predictability. Most of us function best when we understand expectations, routines, and direction. When those things shift, our brain naturally moves into a heightened state of awareness. That uncertainty can increase stress, reduce our focus, and even temporarily affect our performance. One of the most helpful things we can do during change is recognize that these reactions are human and not personal failures. So I'd love to hear from you all in the chat. I love a good prompt. So in one word, how does workplace change usually feel for you? So we'll take some time. We'll go off on the chat. Again, maybe it could be stressful, uncertain. Um, we'll give some time for y'all to think and respond in there. Awesome. So I'm seeing where it's like scary, ill-timed, uncomfortable. You have nerve-wracking. So it can be chaotic if there was not a communication plan, convos before. Yes. Bev said makes my head spin. Will increased FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's a first. First time seeing that, Julie. So yes, no, I appreciate all the engagement in the chat. And this really reflects how varied people's experience with change can be. So definitely validating all of those thoughts when we think about how change affects us in the workplace, whether you're prepared for it, whether it comes out of nowhere. Um, yeah, I'd say for myself, it's definitely can be nerve-wracking, trying to navigate sudden change. As someone who, sometimes I go in my routines, but um, it's like when you see this change happen, it can definitely feel like, okay, how do we regroup? So definitely validate what you all have posted in there. Let me get back to the chat here. So research consistently shows that uncertainty, not just change itself, is one of the biggest drivers of stress in the workplace. When people don't know what to expect, it becomes harder to focus, engage, and perform at their best. Even we can think about just recent times here in Minnesota, just so much uncertainty, so much change, and it's easy to find, yourself being unable to focus just with everything going around. So definitely just some of that uncertainty, that definitely proves true. We also see that frequent or poorly communicated change can reduce engagement over time. Again, I believe Marvis, yeah, spoke on that communication piece, right? If it's not effectively communicated, yeah, the engagement can go down. On the flip side, organizations that prioritize clear communication and transparency tend to see stronger adaptability, right? Having a clear plan and really being certain on there. And what this tells us is that how change is experienced often matters just as much as the change itself. So rethinking adaptability, sometimes people assume that adaptability is just something certain personalities have. So maybe it's someone, who you think is outgoing or someone who you might feel like you have it all together. But research and experience show that adaptability is actually a skill, right? So it develops through practice. It's less about reacting perfectly and more about learning how to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting automatically. Often, the most effective adaptations are small, right? It could be a new shift in perspective, a new routine, a conversation that clarifies expectations. And over time, those small adjustments can help build that confidence and resilience. So again, when we think about adaptability, it's something that it can be learned. It's not something that is innate, that someone is just, born with, but again, something that we can really learn to incorporate into our day-to-day lives. And again, that practice will, make perfect and build that confidence. So when things do feel uncertain, as we spoke on earlier, one of the most helpful strategies is to narrow our focus to what is actually within our control. Some people might say control the controllables. We might not be able to control organizational decisions or timelines, but we can control how we organize our work. I know for myself, I like to start my work day having my to-do list. I don't know if there's any other to-do list people in the chat. Um, but that's something that helps me to stay, something I control, right? Here's my to-do list. And that can help, guide my day, right? So that's one way that you can help stay organized. How we communicate and how we take care of ourselves during that process, right? So having those effective communication skills and just thinking about, okay, how do I take care of myself when I'm navigating this change? And maintaining, even maintaining those small routines can also be powerful. So again, having those consistent habits that help create that stability when other things feel less predictable. So maybe it's, you stick to your routine, making your cup of coffee. even if there's a big change going on, making sure you're sticking to, maybe you're having that time to journal before the workday. So keeping those small routines can be powerful when things are feeling unsteady due to that workplace change. And consistent habits, help create stability when other things feel less predictable. And the other key thing to understand is it is okay to give yourself time to adjust. Adaptability is not going to be an instant comfort, or it doesn't mean instant comfort when things change. It means learning how to move forward, even when things feel unsettled. So again, give yourself time in that space. And, that's another way to really help when things are feeling unsteady in the workplace. So one thing I want to get you all's perspective on is thinking of which aspect of workplace change tends to be most challenging. So I'm gonna try to do a poll. I'm hoping this shows up, and I'll give me a thumbs up if you all can see the poll. Or sorry, yeah, I'm just saying in the chat if you can see this. Okay, so that says yes. Awesome. So we'll give time for people to fill that out. So again, which aspect of workplace change tends to be the most challenging? We'll give you all time to answer that on here. Joan, I could have said all of the above. That is a very fair point. I know I'm making y'all pick one, but definitely it could be a multiple answer question. Yeah, I don't think I can vote either as a host. I think definitely the changing expectation of priorities. Yeah, that can be a big one. Or yeah, it could be all of the above, honestly. Um, okay, so I'm gonna try to present the poll, but I'll say it out loud first. So we had about 50% saying that changing expectations or priorities um was, one of the top things. The next one was not knowing what's coming next, about 30%. We had emotional stress or uncertainty at 10%, and supporting others while managing my own work as 10%. So, okay, end and share. Okay, I think I was able to share it successfully, hopefully. Can you all see the results on here? Okay, awesome. So yeah, definitely look at those changing expectations or priorities, especially when change is occurring. It's like what do I stick with? How do I, navigate my time when those changes do happen? So definitely that's a big piece. I know, even speaking to this, I know in my experience, more so within higher ed, right, as some roles as an advisor, it's like, okay, if someone retires or transitions to a new role, it's like, okay, how do we prioritize taking over this caseload, or how do we manage adjusting to this change? So that's one thing that came to my mind when I thought about those changing expectations or priorities. So yes, that's definitely a big one. Let me stop sharing that now. So yes, thank you all for sharing those, and it's really helpful to see that people experience different challenges during change, and that awareness alone can really help teams support each other better, right? So I think as you think about your team, if you're in that managerial level, or if you're a contributor, which we'll speak to in the next slide, it's really important to have that lens to think about how is my team navigating this change, or how are my colleagues or my peers navigating this change, so you can better support each other as a group. So again, that goes to, different roles, shared responsibility. So during times of change, it's easy. to think that responsibility sits only with leadership. So, oh, the higher ups will figure it out. But that adaptability actually happens across the entire organization. Leaders do play an important role, in setting the tone, providing clarity, and communicating direction, right? Really seeing where leadership is going can really help. And having that clarity, it's like, okay, I understand what's going on. I understand the tone, and just communicating what that direction is, that plays a huge part. And at the same time, contributors play a critical role in maintaining momentum and supporting team stability. So again, it's really that two-way street when you think about it. Um, and that just even wants me to ask the chat, just have there been good examples that you all have seen of, when leaders have really set the tone and providing clarity, or even on the opposite end, have you all seen or had an experience where, contributors helped to maintain that momentum or how it looked like? So I'd be curious if anyone has any positive experiences that they would want to listen to chat, or just any key things. So, see, we got one here. Oh, repeat the question. Yeah, so I was just curious when thinking about leaders setting tone and direction, or contributors sustaining daily momentum when it comes to change. Just curious if you all have had that experience of with leaders setting the tone and direction that's helped you adjust to change, or on the opposite end, have you had a contributor help sustain momentum when you've implemented change um, within your professional career? I'm hoping that makes sense. Awesome. So I see a response from Julie. During the new technology implementation, specific people were designated as super users or point people, coworkers you could go to before, during, and after for help. No, that's major, having point people to go to that maybe have those specific background in those change areas, or people who are specializing. That's a good tip. That's a good one there. Let's see. Brian. So we need a change in the workplace. It's a matter of when, not if, and then just finding out how much will affect us, and typically reductions and do more with less. And Andrew, when a supervisor is truthful about the real reason a change is happening, positive, negative, when a supervisor doesn't seem concerned about stakeholder impact or can't answer how a change will benefit me. Yeah, thank you for those contributions. And Marvis, experience well-planned rollouts and chaotic ones. Communication's key when dealing with change. Change is best when your leader models confidence. Also appreciate the engagement there. So again, I think you all spoke to this, right? Adaptability, it works best when both perspectives are recognized. And thinking about leaders and contributors. And again, change is easier to navigate, when communication, patience, and understanding is happening at all levels. So, um, just speaking to, I know some already spoke to it, but just another opportunity. What's one thing that you wish people understood during times of change, right? I know some of us already spoke to it. Um, so if you already contributed, that's fine. But just wanted to have another guiding question on, again, just one thing that you wish people could grasp or understand, whatever side of the coin you're on, when it comes to navigating change. See, I think someone spoke to it already, of like having that clear direction, um, the larger impact of how it might change day to day, how how someone's role may be affected. Yeah, so Bev says it's hard to know when to bring, let's see. It's hard to know when to bring people in on change. If you say something too soon without details, it creates uncertainty. If you wait too long, people do not have a chance for input. Yeah, that's so true. Having the timing of it um, is key when thinking about when to implement that change. Beth makes you think of the change curve that we spoke about. Yeah, Sarah says be patient. Brian says empathy. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, Andrew, this change is scary and often creates negative impacts that people have to endure and mitigate. And those feelings aren't just people being whiny or weak, they're real. And that's a definite opportunity for harm to be created. Yeah, well, change is real, and everyone processes it differently as we spoke on. So that makes sense. And Julie, understand that normally cool, calm, collected people can lose it due to the stress of the change and allow them to make space for people's feelings and emotions, not just focused on the technical process. Yeah, that I think definitely incorporating that time of the processing as well. Um, so when we think about those timelines, it's super important to have those incorporated of having, understanding that everyone's going to go through, that change at different paces. Yeah, and Jones says when change impacts your entire job and others are not impacted the same way, so they are not patient. Yeah, so many different factors, and truly appreciate everyone's contribution into this. And again, the themes are really just understanding those real impacts of, people's, livelihoods may be affected. People are responding. Um, Not everyone is going to navigate that change at the same pace. It's gonna take time. Um, and when we think about whether you're a leader or a contributor, it's going to be important to just have the mutual understanding of how to effectively implement that as you're going through. So no, I truly appreciate those. So again, when thinking about, simple practices that can make a difference, one of the ideas that we talk about in our resiliency work here at IPD is that adaptability grows again through small intentional practices. And sometimes the most powerful step is to simply pause before reacting. I know sometimes things may come sudden. Again, as we set it up in the beginning, right? It could be in a conversation, news drops on the change, or you see in the email. And, before taking that next step of that quick response or or wanting to send something back right away or something along those lines, taking a step back can really help us to respond more thoughtfully, right? So, whether you're a leader who's implemented a change or you're a contributor who is receiving that, really taking that step back can really help, right? And then another key practice is just reframing. I know it's simple, but so instead of asking why is this happening, we might ask, okay, what does this situation require from me right now? So again, when we think about a change happening, right? Um, we can think, why is this happening? I'm not ready for this, which is totally valid. But then thinking, what does the situation require from me? Maybe it's checking in on your team members, checking in on your colleagues, really getting a feel of, okay, how are they feeling about this change? Or what's one thing I can do to inquire to maybe learn more if it's something that I'm not resonating with right away. It could be how can I try to again reframe and say like, okay, well, what does this mean for me right now? What can I do? And then once you're able to reframe, it's identifying just one constructive step forward. Again, not just 10 steps, not 10 steps, just one, right? So maybe it's I know for us at Metro it was work day, right? It was okay, how do we navigate this whole workday thing? And, there's sessions on how to adjust better. Maybe I can attend one of those sessions. Maybe I can speak with, you know, speak with my team on, okay, how are we navigating this as a navigating this change? Or being, as it was recommended, right, a super user. Um, Maybe I could become the expert or go-to person, to help navigate, or again, maybe it's how can we set up a opportunity for our colleagues to set up time of leadership, right? To maybe voice our opinion, or to just voice how we can effectively implement this change, right? So again, it's just maybe it's not 10 steps, but just one simple thing to have a constructive response. I think too, adaptability grows through steady progress. Again, it's not going to be one quick fix. It's not going to be a swift change. I think ultimately it's okay, how do we have that steady progress, right? What are our benchmarks as we're thinking about navigating this change, or navigating even how to be adaptable, right? It's just having that steady progress and building those adaptability skills, and focusing on, okay, well, how am I progressing? How am I pushing forward? And then that's when I think about, okay, it's just some other piece of tools, or some resources, right? Adaptability is something that you will build over time, and there's a lot of ways to support those processes. I know one a book when we think about, habits, right? Atomic Habits, talking about small, consistent behavior changes. Again, one way that has helped me my adaptability is again controlling my routine and my day to day, my controllables. So okay, I know that each day I can just build on what am I doing to control my day, and I think about just really laying out all I need to get done. How am I addressing maybe the changes? How am I mapping out how this is affecting me or my team? And really just staying organized to help um, navigate that change, or help navigate that adaptability. Just as important is having everyday conversations and learning opportunities within your own organization. And, just to speak to us here at IPD, a lot of our work is centered around helping individuals and teams build resilience in a practical, sustainable way. So this is a definitely great way to continue to invest and grow, and really just having those ongoing supports, having resiliency focused development opportunities, are key as well, right? So again, some practical things that you all can look into. And again, I know Beth has mentioned a lot of different opportunities to connect with us. Um, Whether you're needing assistance in guiding that training or wanting us to come in, um, really having those training and those dialogues can help when thinking about adjusting to that adaptability. I do see some things in the chat. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, sorry, I missed a few things. Oh, Andrew says, prayer helped navigate the workday change. And Beth said, I used to have framed on my desk at a previous job. Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate you putting that in the chat, Beth. Um, yes, leading teams through change as we spoke through. So again, just some practical ways to carry that adaptability. And just one thing, or one way to carry forward. Again, some key things that I want to leave you all with today is, again, first is that change will always disrupt stability in some way. And again, that's a human normal response, right? So again, as I was mentioning prior, not to feel weak or ashamed if you are navigating that change. And it's a in a difficult sense, right? So um it's normal, it's human response. And secondly, adaptability is something It's not something people either have or they don't have. Again, it develops through practice and experience. So again, whether it's those small habits, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Um, how are you practicing that adaptability to adjust, or to even be that point person? That's going to be key as you continue to strengthen, grow, and learn in that space. And third, as we spoke on, those small actions often make the biggest difference during uncertain times. So again, even if it's something small, right? It's like you're supporting your team, you're having those spaces, having those intentional dialogues, not leaving them in the dark. Really, really having building something out to where there's one thing I could do to help to build my adaptability or to navigate that change to restore some stability in there. And finally, progress during change really happens all at once. It usually happens step by step. So again, celebrating those steps that you're taking and really being able to understand that it's not all going to change at one time, but over time through those many steps.